There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels staged. Too quiet, too still, like the air is holding its breath before something breaks. That's what woke me, I think. Not the sound of the cab pulling up outside, not even Hannah coming home. It was the silence before all of it. It was just after 5 a.m. Still pitch dark outside, except for the soft orange hue of the street lamp that leaked through the blinds. I remember blinking a few times, confused. For a second, I thought maybe I had dreamed the whole thing. But something gnawed at me, some gut feeling I couldn't name. I got up quietly, careful not to make any noise as I walked over to the window that overlooked the street. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. Then a taxi rolled up and stopped right in front of our driveway, its headlights briefly washing over the siding of our house. That's when I saw her. Hannah stepped out of the car slowly, like she wasn't quite ready to be seen. My first thought was confusion, complete and utter confusion. She was barefoot. Her shoes dangled from one hand, her high heels clasped like some afterthought. She wore a dark blue evening dress, crinkled from wear, and definitely not something I remembered seeing in her closet. The hem was damp, and the way she held it slightly off the ground told me she had walked through grass or wet pavement before reaching the cab. And then the man's jacket, a tailored blazer, too big on her frame, draped over her shoulders like someone else had placed it there. That hit me in the chest harder than I'd like to admit. But what really nailed me, what really stuck in my brain like a thorn, was the lipstick on her neck. It wasn't smudged like it had been wiped away. It was intact, bright red, fresh, deliberate. Not hers. Hannah doesn't wear that color. She's always been more subtle. Pale rose, soft pink, occasional nude. Never red. Never anything bold. That mark didn't match the woman I married. She held a black leather briefcase I didn't recognize. Sleek, expensive looking, and out of place in every possible way. It was the kind of item someone gives you to hold after a night out, or something you pick up while you're pretending to come from a meeting that never happened. And then the taxi driver got out and pulled a small rolling suitcase from the trunk. Hers. He set it on the curb gently, gave a polite nod, then drove off. She stood there alone for a few seconds, just outside the front gate, lit by the rising sun and the last gasps of moonlight. Her expression faltered. It was only for a breath, maybe less, but I saw it. That moment of hesitation, like her brain was recalculating what version of the story she'd walk in with. A lie being assembled on the fly. And then, poof, it was gone. The look disappeared as quickly as it came, and she transformed. Her shoulders squared. Her posture straightened. She fixed her hair like she was just tired from an overnight flight, then stepped inside like nothing was off. I backed away from the window and stood in the dark hallway, unsure what to do with what I'd just seen. I didn't want to be the guy who jumps to conclusions. I didn't want to be the guy who doubts his wife. But something deep in me had already shifted. I didn't know what it was at the time, not yet. But the crack had formed. The front door opened, and her voice floated up the stairs, sweet and casual, as if she hadn't just walked out of someone else's night and into our home. "Hey babe, you're up early," she called out. "I didn't want to wake you. Last night was a mess. Total disaster. You wouldn't believe it." I didn't answer at first. I just stood there at the top of the stairs, listening to the rustle of her clothes as she set down her bags, kicked off her shoes, and made her way to the kitchen. I had to stay late for a last-minute meeting with Carter. You know how he gets? Freaks out over every quarterly report like the company's going to collapse. I nodded slowly, more out of reflex than belief. Carter was her boss. He was also a 54-year-old man with a nervous stammer and a marriage on the rocks, if Hannah's past venting sessions were to be believed. Not exactly the kind of guy she'd end up doing an impromptu all-nighter with, let alone return home dressed like a walk of shame. Still, her story flowed too smoothly to interrupt. "There weren't any Ubers out there," she said, pouring herself a glass of water. "And Carter's assistant had to drop him at the airport, so I just grabbed a cab. God, I hate cabs. Smelled like peanut oil and regret." She laughed a little, a light, practiced sound, like she was auditioning for normal. I stepped into the kitchen finally. She looked up, her eyes catching mine for just a second too long. "What?" she asked, smiling. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I shrugged. "You just surprised me, that's all." "Well, you surprised me too," she said, walking past me and planting a quick kiss on my cheek. I noticed she avoided turning the side of her neck where the lipstick stain had been. I also noticed she hadn't taken off the jacket yet. I watched her move around the kitchen, grabbing a banana and pretending like it was just another morning. But everything about her felt slightly off, too deliberate. Her tone, her posture, even the way she carried herself. It was like she was playing a role she hadn't rehearsed quite enough for. The smell of cologne hung faintly in the air, expensive and masculine. I couldn't place the brand, but it definitely wasn't mine. "So," I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as I could manage, "you were working all night?" She nodded. "Yeah. Carter's been freaking out over the Q3 numbers. We had to do some late reformatting on the pitch deck for the investors. I didn't even get a chance to text. My phone died around midnight." That part stuck with me. Her phone died. Except, she never lets her phone die. Ever. She carries a power bank in her purse for that exact reason. Always needs to stay connected. Always on call. Even when we're on vacation. Still, I said nothing. I just nodded again, feeling like a stranger in my own kitchen. She disappeared upstairs soon after, saying she needed to shower before her real workday started. Left the briefcase on the kitchen table. I stared at it for a long time. It didn't have a brand on it, no initials. Just clean, minimalist leather. It looked like something gifted, not bought. I didn't open it. Couldn't. That would have made it real. And at that moment I still wanted, desperately, to believe she was telling the truth. I just didn't know which part of me I was trying to protect. I tried to let it go. That morning, after Hannah came home with her half-made-up story and that brief flicker of guilt in her eyes, I convinced myself to drop it. Or maybe convinced is too generous. I buried it. Packed it down with all the other things I hadn't wanted to see lately. It's easy, in a weird way, to ignore things when you don't want them to be true. You rewrite little details in your head until they feel like nothing. And for a while, that worked. I made coffee like usual. I kissed her goodbye before work. I even joked with her about not letting Carter drag her into another midnight panic spiral. And she laughed like nothing had ever happened. But something had happened. I just hadn't let myself look at it yet. That day, I couldn't focus on work. My mind kept playing it all back. The cab, the jacket, the lipstick, the sudden briefcase. Like a looping movie I couldn't shut off. My stomach turned with every memory. And that's when I realized the night before wasn't an isolated thing. It was just the first time I saw it clearly. The signs had been there for months. Her phone, for one. It used to live on the counter, on the armrest, on the nightstand, just another object in our home. But sometime this past summer, it became another limb. It followed her everywhere. Bathroom, shower. Even when she went to water the plants in the backyard, it came with her, clutched tightly like a lifeline. At first, I didn't question it. We all get a little too attached to our devices. But then came the new password. Longer, more complicated. She used to hand it to me without thinking, "Can you check the weather?" Or, "Can you reply to my mom?" No second thoughts. Now if I so much as glanced in its direction, she tilted it away like she was hiding a secret. Then there was the way notifications stopped showing on her lock screen. "It's just for focus," she'd said. "I don't want distractions popping up during meetings." But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't about work at all. It was about keeping things hidden. From me. The work delays were another thing. Fridays especially. They used to be our night. We'd order Thai food, binge some mindless TV, or go to that dive bar 2 blocks down for cheap drinks and bad karaoke. But slowly, those nights evaporated. One excuse at a time. A new client needed onboarding. Carter was in a panic again. The deck wasn't done. She'd roll in at 9:30 or later, always exhausted, always apologetic. Once or twice, sure. Life happens. But this became a pattern. She'd come home disheveled, flushed, sometimes oddly giddy, other times detached, distant like she was still somewhere else. She stopped wearing her gym clothes, even though she claimed she was going. I remember one day I came home early and noticed her sneakers in the same exact spot they'd been in the day before. Her gym bag, still packed. But her calendar said, spin class at 6:15. When I asked how the class went, she smiled. Okay asterisk lur. My legs are toast. She lied so easily it scared me. And the jewelry, small changes but noticeable. A new necklace that didn't look like her taste. A thin gold bracelet I never saw her buy. One weekend, I found a small velvet pouch tucked into her purse. Inside was a pair of earrings. I held them in my hand, just turning them over, wondering who gave them to her. She walked in while I was holding them and froze for a fraction of a second. Then she said they were a gift from her boss. A work milestone thing. I wanted to believe her. God, I did. But there was no card, no box, no explanation. Just expensive earrings stuffed into the bottom of her purse like they didn't matter. The worst was the cologne. At least 3 times over the last couple of months, I caught the scent of something unfamiliar on her coat. A musky, woodsy smell, not overpowering but distinct. The first time I mentioned it casually. She said she'd bumped into someone at the office, laughed it off. The second time, she brushed it away, probably from the Uber driver. But by the third time, I didn't even ask. I just stood in the laundry room, holding her coat, breathing in someone else's scent on my wife's clothes. I hadn't realized how much I'd gaslit myself until then. Each time a red flag appeared, I had folded it neatly and tucked it into the drawer of "she loves me," so it must be nothing. But that drawer was overflowing now. The day after she came home in the cab, I started watching her more closely. Not in a creepy way, not like I was spying, but like I was finally paying attention. I noticed she didn't talk to me the way she used to. Conversations felt edited, filtered, like she was carefully curating her words so I wouldn't ask questions. Her body language changed too. She was more physically distant, less touchy, less spontaneous. We used to pass by each other in the kitchen and she'd brush her fingers against my back or kiss my cheek mid-conversation. Now it felt like she moved around me, like I was a piece of furniture she needed to avoid bumping into. That Friday, she worked late again. I stayed up, pretending to fall asleep on the couch. I wanted to see how she'd act walking through the door. She came in at 10:17 p.m. Her hair was freshly brushed, makeup touched up. Her eyes darted to me, startled to find me still awake. She said she'd had a glass of wine with Carter after wrapping the presentation. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. It was too relaxed, too rehearsed. I nodded and told her I was going to bed. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and counted every excuse, every inconsistency, every small betrayal I had ignored. Saturday morning, I tried something I wasn't proud of. While she was in the shower, I checked her purse. I don't know what I expected to find. Some magic smoking G*N, I guess. But all I found was that same briefcase from the other morning, half-zipped inside. The handle was scuffed, like it had been used often, but there were no papers inside. Just a bottle of perfume she didn't wear around me anymore, and a receipt for 2 lattes and a croissant, at a cafe on the other side of town. Dated Thursday, at 9:43 a.m. She had told me she was in a meeting then. I remembered because I tried to call, and she texted back, "In with the team. All good." That was when something broke in me. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Suspicion isn't truth. And I knew her well enough to know that if I accused her with half a case, she'd twist it, make me feel crazy, flip it back on me. So I did something else instead. I installed a tracking app on her car. Felt wrong. It was wrong. But I told myself I needed clarity. Not for revenge. Not even for anger. I just needed to know. That Sunday, she said she was heading to a coworker's baby shower. She left around 11 a.m. Dressed nice. Smelled like that same perfume from the briefcase. Said she'd be home by 4. By noon, her car was parked downtown. Not at a baby shower. Not at anyone's home. But at a boutique hotel. That was when I stopped pretending I didn't know what was happening. It wasn't just the lipstick or the cologne or the briefcase or the Friday nights. It wasn't even about Carter or some mystery man. It was about the way she looked at me when she lied, and how easy it was for her to do it. The funny thing about confirmation is that it doesn't really bring relief. It's not satisfying, not vindicating, not even numbing. It just settles. Heavy, slow, final. Like a slab of wet cement poured onto everything you used to believe. When I saw the tracking dot from Hannah's car stop near Lake Erie that Friday afternoon, a strange calm took over me. It was the kind of calm that only shows up when your body gives up trying to lie to itself. She had told me she was attending a team-building retreat that weekend. The company rented out a few lakeside cabins for strategic planning and cross-departmental alignment. That was the exact phrase she used. She even rolled her eyes at it, like she was annoyed, like she hated the idea as much as I was supposed to. She packed light, just one rolling suitcase, a gym bag, and her laptop. Kissed me goodbye like it was any other trip. Said she might be spotty on texts because cell reception out there is garbage. I smiled and nodded. I even offered to drive her to the meetup point, but she declined. Someone from the office is giving me a lift, she said, like it was no big deal. Save your gas. I already knew. Not all the details, not the full picture. But enough. Enough to plant my steps in the direction I never thought I'd walk. Confirmation. Evidence. Truth that didn't leave room for spin. That morning, I had driven by the office parking lot. Just a quick pass, pretending I was headed somewhere else. Her car wasn't there, but she had said they were carpooling from work. So where was she? I checked the app. The GPS pin blinked quietly by the lake. Later that day, when I got home, I opened the mailbox and found a receipt stuffed inside a promotional flyer. It was folded neatly, almost too neatly, as if someone meant for it to stay hidden in the clutter. But it had our address on it, and it was unmistakably hers. The receipt was for a lakeside cottage rental, dated 2 weeks back. Not this weekend, the last one. 2 guests listed. Romantic package. That's what it actually said. Right there on the invoice in elegant font. Romantic package. Includes wine, chocolate, breakfast basket for 2. I read it 3 times, just to make sure my eyes weren't twisting it into something worse. No company logos. No mention of any off-site training. Just her name, the check-in date, and one signature that wasn't hers. At least not her handwriting. I sat on the porch for a while, letting the lake breeze from hundreds of miles away wash over me in my mind. I wondered what she had worn, whether they laughed about me, whether she told him she loved him yet, or if she still reserved that lie for me alone. That evening, I made the decision to go. Not to explode, not to confront, not to scream or throw punches. I wasn't looking for drama. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. The drive to Lake Erie was quiet. I didn't put on music. I didn't call anyone. Just me and the road, and that little pulsing blue dot on the tracking app that hadn't moved since early afternoon. It sat parked near a row of secluded cottages just off the waterline. The kind that looked charming on postcards and devastating in real life. I parked my car far down the dirt road, tucked behind a row of tall trees. The sun was starting to fall, casting golden light across the water, which rippled like it had no idea lives were being torn apart on its shore. I walked toward the cabin slowly, careful not to step on twigs or gravel. It felt ridiculous, like something out of a bad detective show, but it also felt necessary. I reached a break in the tree line and stopped. The cabin had wide windows facing the lake. No curtains, no blinds. I had a clear view straight through to the interior. She was there. Hannah, in a white knit sweater and jeans, her hair loosely tied, like she was trying to look casual but also beautiful. She always tried to look beautiful when she was nervous. She was sitting across a small table from a man. Tall, a little older, silver in his beard, relaxed posture like he belonged there. Carter. I recognized him from a company party I'd attended years ago. I remember thinking he seemed nervous back then, flustered by the simplest conversations. But here he looked comfortable, like he wasn't just visiting this life, he was living it. They were eating dinner, just the 2 of them, 1 plate each, 2 wine glasses, a bottle half finished. a candle burning between them. She laughed at something he said. Not a fake office laugh. A real one, the kind that makes your nose crinkle and your shoulders drop. The kind she used to give me when we first started dating. Then she reached across the table and touched his hand. Just a touch. Fingers grazing knuckles. But it wasn't casual. He smiled and squeezed hers back. Then leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick kiss. Not hesitant. A kiss you don't give someone unless you've done it before. I felt something strange in that moment. Not rage. Not even betrayal. Just finality. The way the last page of a book feels when you realize the story ended a few chapters ago. But you were still flipping through, hoping it wasn't over yet. They disappeared into the bedroom not long after. The candle burned down. The light in the bedroom flicked on. I didn't stay. I didn't need to see what came next. I already knew. The rest was just noise. I walked back to my car the same way I came, quiet, slow, careful. But this time I wasn't being stealthy. I was grieving. On the drive back, I kept thinking about how easily she had rewritten her schedule. How effortlessly she had carved out a secret life and trusted that I would never question it. How many weekends had this happened before I finally noticed? How many lies had she told while looking me in the eye? She hadn't even tried to be creative. That part stung the most. The lies were lazy, predictable, as if I wasn't worth the effort of a convincing story. Back at home, I sat at the kitchen table with the receipt laid out in front of me, beside the tracking log from the app and a few photos I had quietly snapped through the window. This was no one-time slip. This was a routine, a second life. One she built, cultivated, and protected not just from me but against me. The truth was no longer hiding in blurry memories or gut feelings. It wasn't a hunch. It was documented, time-stamped, photographed. I made a copy of everything. **TS. Receipts. Dates. I started a folder on my laptop and labeled it something so dry it hurt. Personal records. No drama. No yelling. No confrontation. Just facts. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about clarity. About finally seeing the lines she had crossed, the bridges she had burned, and the truth she could no longer outrun. And the most painful part? I still wanted her to walk through that front door and tell me something that would make it all go away. Even if I knew it never would. I didn't sleep that night. The house was quiet, almost too quiet, like it was trying to apologize for the truth it now held. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside, sounded louder than it should have. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind stuck in a relentless loop. The touch of her hand on his, the kiss, the wine glasses clinking in the flickering candlelight. I wasn't seeing it anymore. I was reliving it, frame by frame. I got up around 4 a.m. and made coffee, not because I needed it, but because it gave me something to do with my hands. The kitchen light buzzed overhead while the coffee pot hissed and spat like it was angry too. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not when she walked back through the door, pretending to be tired from strategic planning. Not when she kissed me on the cheek with lips that had kissed him the night before. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of controlling the conversation. I wasn't going to yell or break things or beg. I was going to build a case. Quietly, carefully. One that spoke louder than any argument ever could. That's how it began. First, I created a folder on an encrypted drive, something she couldn't stumble across by accident. I named it something forgettable, Finances Q4. Inside, I began collecting everything. I uploaded the cottage receipt, the car tracking logs, **TS from the app that showed every Friday night she'd worked late, and where she had actually been. I even marked the one from 2 weeks ago, another trip to that same cabin, same destination, same timeline. Pattern. Not a fluke. Next came the texts. Not hers, mine. I scrolled back through months of our conversations. There it was, laid out in digital ink, her excuses, her last-minute changes, her sudden unavailability, the fake meetings, the missed calls, the carefully crafted reassurances that seemed comforting at the time but now read like scripts. I **TED all of them and saved them chronologically. Then I made a decision I hadn't wanted to face. I logged into our shared phone plan account. Hannah had always been a creature of habit. She used iMessage when she could, but when signal dropped, she defaulted to SMS. Our phone bill didn't show message content, but it did show numbers, times, durations. That's how I found the number. It appeared again and again, always on Friday afternoons, late evenings, sometimes even weekday mornings. Usually short calls, but consistent, frequent, repeating, always before and after the work delays. I wrote it down and searched it online. No name came up, just a registered wireless number, no business tag. Burner phone maybe, or a second line. Either way, it didn't belong to her company. The next day, I drove out to the grocery store and bought a basic pay-as-you-go smartphone in cash. I didn't want anything tracing back to me. Not yet. I downloaded a free call recording app and installed a voice recorder as well. I wasn't planning to use it recklessly, but if I ever got the chance to catch something in real time, I wanted to be ready. By that evening, I had a plan. When she came home on Sunday night, everything was back in place. Her suitcase sat by the door. Her laptop bag was slung over one shoulder. She looked tan, like she'd spent a weekend in the sun, though she claimed it rained the whole time. "Exhausting weekend," she said with a soft sigh as she kissed my cheek. "Carter was a nightmare. We basically rewrote the whole pitch deck from scratch." "Wow," I replied, playing my part. "You guys must really be locked in. Hope it pays off." She smiled and nodded, clearly relieved I wasn't asking questions. That told me everything I needed to know. I watched her unpack later. She pulled out the same knit sweater she'd been wearing in the cabin. Same jeans. She didn't notice I was watching from the hallway, just stood there humming a soft tune to herself, oblivious. That's when I noticed something else. Her briefcase, different. It was almost identical, but not quite. Slightly larger, lighter stitching. The same brand, but it wasn't the one from before. I checked the label inside when she left the room. It had someone else's initials etched into the lining. R.H. Carter's full name was Richard Howard. She hadn't even brought her own bag back. She had someone else's. She'd either taken his by mistake, or she didn't care enough to swap it back. That, more than anything, told me how careless she had become. Or maybe how comfortable. I took pictures of the briefcase, inside, outside, the initials. Uploaded it to the folder. Added a timestamp. The next few weeks passed like a game of chess, except only I knew we were playing. I didn't push. I didn't probe. I let her talk freely, and I recorded everything she said. I wanted to see how far she'd go to maintain the lie. Every time she said, "Carter kept us late," I logged the timestamp. Every time she said, "I'm heading to the office," and the tracking app said otherwise, I made note. She was seeing him on Thursdays too now. Shorter visits, mostly evening stops. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes less, but always consistent. Always just enough to suggest routine. I tracked one night in particular, a Tuesday, when she left at 8 p.m. to go for a walk and never came back until after 11:30. Her location hovered near an upscale apartment complex across town. That night, I waited by the front window, watching her come up the walkway. She looked refreshed, happy. She stopped before reaching the porch, took out her phone, and texted someone. I checked mine. Nothing. I watched her screen glow for another minute as she typed and smiled at whatever came back. When she walked inside, I asked how her walk was. She said it was good, peaceful, just needed to clear her head. She smelled like cologne again. I didn't say a word. That night, I added the location to the log, mapped it, tracked every return visit. The apartment belonged to a property management firm, but a quick search told me it had a handful of short-term corporate leases. Executive housing. Carter's. By the end of the month, I had more than enough to confront her. But I didn't. Not yet. I wanted her to lie to my face one last time. I wanted to hear it. Not because I needed it, but because I wanted her to know what it sounded like. I waited until the night she said she was staying late for a virtual board review. "Shouldn't be home until after 10, she texted, at 6:57 p.m. By 7:20, the GPS showed her parked at the apartment again. I took my burner phone, drove across town, and waited in a car parked 2 spaces away. I saw her walk in. She had changed, different outfit from when she left the house. Hair fixed, new heels. She entered through the side entrance. No hesitation. I didn't follow her. I didn't knock on the door. I just sat in my car with my hand resting on the burner phone. Not calling, just holding it. And I told myself this was the last time I'd do this. The last time I'd put myself through it. The next morning, while she was still asleep, I printed everything. I didn't organize it. I didn't make it neat. I just laid it out on the dining table. Receipts, **TS, tracking logs, photos, a printed copy of her text message from the night before, side by side with a timestamp of her GPS location. When she came down and saw it, she froze. Her expression was pure white, blank, like her mind hadn't caught up to her body yet. She didn't say anything, and for the first time in months I didn't ask. I just looked at her, because now the case had built itself. When she saw the folder on the table, she stopped mid-step. It was still early, barely 7:30 in the morning. She was dressed for work, coffee in hand, eyes bleary with sleep and mascara smudged just slightly from the night before. But when her gaze landed on the table, everything about her posture changed. She straightened like she'd just been caught stepping into the wrong house. The silence between us was immediate and deafening. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't ask if it was mine. She knew. I watched her eyes scan the contents. The printouts, the **TS, the receipts layered together in chronological order. One page bled into the next with dates, times, addresses, photographs. No explanations, just facts. The truth laid bare under the weight of her own pattern. For a moment she looked like she might bolt. Her hand gripped the back of the dining chair as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Just a sharp breath. Shallow. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. She reached forward and picked up one of the pages near the top. It was the receipt for the cottage rental from 2 weeks earlier. The one she never mentioned. The one she never planned for me to find. She stared at it like maybe, just maybe, if she looked long enough, it would rewrite itself into something innocent. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were already welling with tears. But I didn't see guilt in them, not yet. I saw calculation. Her mind working overtime to find the best angle, the most believable entry point into a story that had already fallen apart. "Jake," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "What is this?" The lie came out anyway. Even now, I raised my eyebrows, not in surprise, just exhaustion. "What does it look like?" She blinked rapidly, and for a second I thought she might double down, might spin some convoluted story about how this was all a misunderstanding, a big coincidence, a twisted invasion of privacy. But she didn't. She just sat down. No chair pulled out. No dramatic slump. She simply folded her knees beneath her like she had no idea how to keep standing. The coffee cup remained in her hand, untouched. She stared at it like she didn't remember making it. Her lips parted again, and she tried. "I never meant for it to get this far." That was the first honest sentence I'd heard from her in months. Still, I didn't respond. I just leaned back against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching her try to stitch together some kind of dignity. "I didn't," she started, then stopped, shaking her head. "I never wanted to hurt you." Another cliché. Another sentence pulled from the cheater's script. I almost smiled at how predictable it was. "You hurt me the moment you decided to lie," I said, my voice calm but cold. Everything after that was just the follow-up act. She looked up at me again, and this time, there was something close to desperation in her eyes. "Jake, please. I know I've made mistakes. I know I lied." "Mistakes," I cut in. "A mistake is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is spilling red wine on the rug. What you did was a decision. Repeated. Int asterisk mate. Strategic." Her jaw trembled, and she finally set the cup down. It clinked against the wood, a tiny sound that somehow felt enormous. "I thought you didn't love me anymore," she said quietly, barely above a whisper. That stopped me. Not because it was true, but because it was absurd. I didn't love you? I repeated, stunned. Hannah, I built my life around you. I believed in you when I should have questioned. I defended you when my friends raised eyebrows. I trusted you so completely that it took literal GPS coordinates and hotel receipts for me to finally open my eyes. And now you're telling me I didn't love you? She wiped at her cheeks, but the tears didn't stop. You stopped noticing me, she whispered. You stopped seeing me. That's what this was about? I said, voice rising for the first time. Being noticed? So you found someone to see you better? Someone who compliments your dress and sends emojis at midnight? That's what justifies all this? No, she snapped, suddenly louder. It wasn't just that. It was everything. The routines. The distance. You were always working. You were always tired. And I was lonely. I finished for her, shaking my head. You were lonely, so you blew up our marriage? She opened her mouth again, but this time I held up a hand. No more, I said. No more stories. No more justifications. This isn't a therapy session. This is exposure. That's all this is. A final unveiling. She stared at me, stunned into silence. I picked up the folder and dropped it in front of her again. This, I said, tapping it, is not about whether or not I failed to notice you. It's about the fact that you made a choice. Over and over. A fully conscious, deliberate, calculated choice. You didn't just betray me. You replaced me. She crumbled then. Her posture collapsed, hands covering her face, sobs escaping like she couldn't hold them back anymore. But I didn't move to comfort her. Not this time. I'd comforted her 100 times when she was lying to me. I wasn't going to do it again now that she was finally telling the truth. After a few minutes, she looked up. What now? She asked, voice cracking. Are you leaving me? I looked at her for a long time. I could see her trying to gauge what version of me was standing in front of her now. The man who might forgive or the one who had finally had enough. I gave her my answer without raising my voice. You left a long time ago, I said. You just forgot to take your things. She blinked, then sat back slowly, as if the words physically knocked the wind out of her. I'll give you until the weekend, I added, to get your stuff together. After that, I'm changing the locks. Jake. No, I said, sharper now. We're not doing this part where you try to stay, or spin some new version of the truth. This house isn't yours anymore. You gave it away. She nodded slowly, pressing her palm to her chest like it physically ached. I walked upstairs and packed a suitcase for myself. Just a few things. I wasn't running. I just didn't want to be under the same roof while she cried for herself and not what she'd done. Before I left, I paused in the hallway and looked back down the stairs. She was still at the table, head bowed, surrounded by the evidence of her second life. It wasn't the moment our marriage ended. That moment had already come and gone, quietly, secretly, months ago. This was just the moment I stopped pretending otherwise. While boxing up her things, I found old letters hidden deep in the closet. Notes from other men. Some dated back years. A professor from college. A former coworker. One even mentioned meeting in secret again. It wasn't just Carter. It never was. This wasn't one mistake. It was a pattern. A cycle. I stood there holding proof that the betrayal didn't begin recently. It had lived beside me for years, wearing different names. The divorce was finalized quickly. She gave up her claims to avoid more exposure. I packed the last of her things into boxes and left them outside. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I removed our photos from the walls, keeping only a single sticky note on my mirror. Trust is not blindness. For the first time in months, I felt light again. Alone, yes, but not broken. I was free, and I was finally breathing on my own.